Here we go. Welcome to Double Dribble Bucks. This is Seth, and with me, as always, is my good friend Brett. How you doing tonight, Brett?
I'm doing okay. I am not happy that we lost to the rat faced boy and
Mm-hmm.
his crappy haircut. Something was just off today. We'll get into it, but I don't know. We cranked out a lot of really good wins, so it's just disappointing to lose on a back to back to the Hawks. As Marcus was saying, like they've beaten a lot of really good teams and then lost to some crappy teams. So I don't know. It's just one game. It's a long season, but it would have been really nice to get a victory tonight.
Yeah, I mean, it has been a pretty great run to make up for that 2-8 start. So definitely we needed that. Sure, it was against a lot of the bottom of the league, so to speak. Not the best teams, but in the first 10 games when we were 2-8, we had some pretty bad losses in there as well. So at least we're beating the bad teams for the most part. I mean, 9-1 in the last 10 games before tonight was best in the league in the past 10 games. So we definitely turned things around somewhat. And maybe we'll just start off with that. Like, do you think, what do you think has been different from the first 10 games, 2-8, to the second set of 10 games where we were 9-1?
Well, Doc has a pretty good strategy. I think, he's starting Ajax and he's doing some of the things that obviously we're going to take credit for, where, he's putting Ajax on their best player, getting him to annoy them and play great defense. And if not, he gets in foul trouble. And so that minimizes his minutes, which is unfortunate. But we're not seeing Doc forcing these veterans to get minutes. He's just playing who's playing at their best, and it's working. And I think tonight he could have maybe kind of broken from that strategy a little bit when it was clear that things were kind of slipping away. Atlanta's another team that I feel like they always beat us with their bench, which I'm always thinking about, like, how are you doing that? Like, I understand that we put a lot of money on Giannis and Dame, but it's not like, does Atlanta just have a bunch of $10 million players and just have like 15 of them? Because that doesn't make a ton of sense to me. Um, but yeah, I mean, he's trying new rotations, playing a lot of AJ Green, who's been playing really well. So yeah, I think it's just, gelling, finding what works for the team. And I think that's kind of what's some of the success, at least.
Yeah, there have been a couple of lineup shuffling things that have been, pretty somewhat extreme from looking at the first 5 or 10 games compared to the previous 10 games. I guess the one that stood out to me, one of them that stood out to me, obviously Pat Connaughton not playing. That he has 6 DNPs. I don't know if maybe a couple of those he was hurt. I don't remember, but 6 of the last 10 he didn't even play at all. And so actually I looked at minutes per game to kind of see like how has that changed. And that hasn't really changed. He had 16.4 minutes per game the first 10 games, which isn't a ton, first of all. And he had 21.5 minutes per game in the second 10 games, but he only played 4. So like when he's playing 15, 20 minutes a game. It's just he's basically just lost his spot in the rotation completely. And you know me, I haven't been a PC hater. I think he's fine. I think he's a pretty good player. But what I appreciate Doc learning is Ajax and AJ Green are better players and helping the team more than a PC, and like they need playing time. And so I think that's the lesson that Doc took in terms of the whole PC thing. Is I don't think PC was the problem as to why we were 2-8. I don't think him not playing. I don't think that's why we're 9-1. But I think the team's better when he's like 9th or 10th in the rotation. So I like that.
Yeah, I agree. I'm not going to say that by any stretch you nailed it, that we are winning because he's not playing or that we weren't doing anything because he was playing. But, I think Doc, being a veteran coach, does have that ability to say, like, look, you're just not playing well right now. Like, you're going to have to sit down and, like, figure this out, and we're going to go a different way for a little while. You can still get your minutes at some point, but, like, be a team player. And if you're just something's off, like, I mean, Doc was really on PC last year, I believe, saying that he had a lot of stuff to fix and was kind of like calling him out a lot, I thought. So, maybe that's part of it. I do have to say, Pat came in for the last 5 minutes of this game and looked terrible in my mind.
Yeah.
I hate to use this as an example, but he was running like an autistic kid. His head was down. He was like running, like forcing his arms to swing a certain way. I was like, that's not how you run, man. Like, what are you doing? Like, look at the ball, look at the play. Like, what are you running at? It's not our sprint to get down to the end of the court quicker. And I don't know. Something seems off with the guy, and maybe Doc felt like he was performing better and gave him some minutes. But and I'm not going to judge him on this game. I'm definitely not doing that. But something was off. He just didn't look good. I wasn't happy to have him come in. Whereas on the flip side, you look at like, was it AJ Johnson is our rookie, who got some extra minutes at a blowout yesterday, and he looked great. I mean, he made a three. He was aggressive. Like you said, PC being the 9th or 10th option is definitely going to be the way to go until he can figure out what's going on. I mean, he's still a good role player, but yeah, he's got to figure out what's broken there for sure.
Yeah, I like him on the bench. I mean, if people get hurt or so things aren't working, then you can fall back on a veteran who's going to take care of the ball. He can handle the ball more than a lot of these other guys. So, I don't want to pay $10 million a year for that guy on a roster, moving forward. That's not ideal. But just him on the roster as a player, like, I think that is helpful to any team. Like, he's a really good veteran presence and can come in and give some solid minutes. And some games it's great. Some games it looks not great, but I'd say more often than not, he's solid. He's, not turning it over a bunch, not making stupid plays. Like he's a smart player who generally makes good plays. And again, we don't have a lot of ball handlers. He can actually do that somewhat. I don't want him to be our starting point guard, but right. He can do that. If Dame gets hurt and then Wright gets knocked up, and we're like down 2 point guards, Rollins has the shoulder surgery, like what do we do at that point? It's really nice to have a guy like that on the bench.
Yeah.
So, well, another thing I noticed was, I mean, we've kind of alluded to it, but AJ Green, he played 14.7 minutes in those first 10 games, and he's playing 24 minutes now, the past 10 games. So 10 more minutes per game on average for AJ Green. That's a pretty big difference. He started 3 times these last 10 games. So, that's probably the main guy that people are talking about and noticing. And he's earned it, and it's not just the shooting, it's the defense, which I think we talked about last time, but yeah, he's just been great all around. He's just super, super solid. Doc seems to like it a lot. Still not playing as much as like a Prince, and Trent Jr. is getting 23.6. So Trent Jr. is playing pretty much just as much as AJ Green. Which I guess I'm fine with. I mean, we have a number of players who could help the team, and that's a good problem. I guess it's just when they're missing all their shots, it looks worse. So,
yeah, exactly. I mean, AJ Green, if you are like tonight, he just could not buy a shot for most of the game, and it's like, all right, if your role is going to be primarily to be a scorer, and you're 0 for 5 from 3, like, come on, man, all you're doing is killing us at this point. Like, you're not a bad defender, but you're not the best defender. So like you need to be making your shots. And it's the same type of thing with Ajax, where it's like you can score. That's not what we need you to do. But if you're getting into foul trouble early, well, like now you're kind of messing it all up because now we can't do some of the things that we wanted to do. It's just, that's just a lack of maturity. He's got to just figure out what are some things he can do. He's just such a freak athlete, which is, funny to say on a Bucks team that, Ajax is a freak, but the guy looks like he can just like jump 20 feet in the air, like with such ease. Like, it's just almost like he just got like a superpower where he's just like, I'm just going to just jump for the hell of it, like super high and like fast and do all these types of things. But he does have to figure out some of these things. He's missing, wide open layups to like pass it out to a 3-point scorer.
Mm-hmm.
When he is wide open for a 3, like you got to be able to make that shot. Those are the types of things that you just, I think AJ Green is doing a much better job with that. He kind of knows what he has to do. Ajax, I think, is still trying to figure out how to be a little bit better at that. And maybe that's some of the things we kind of play around with, like have Green start and see if Ajax coming off the bench as like a obviously not a 6-man like Bobby, but kind of close to it and getting a lot of minutes after the fact. I'd be interested to see how that works as well.
Yeah, to me, the obvious thing is Ajax should start at the 3 instead of Prince, and AJ Green should start at the 2. Like Ajax and AJ Green both starting makes a ton of sense to me. And like we went over it last time. Prince should be the number 4, not the number 3. I think that would be great. And how much minutes do they end up getting? I don't know. I guess we'll see. But I guess
did you see Prince that was leading the league in 3-point percentage?
Yeah. Yeah, I know. He's shooting.
It's insane. Like I understand
4% or something.
I think it was 56. I thought I saw, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's not going to continue to be that good.
No, it's hard to believe. Well, I heard Marcus say it like 3 times at him. Like, who's he talking about? You can't be talking about Prince. And we're like, finally had to like break out the phones and be like, all right, that's what he's talking about.
Yeah, I mean, he has been awesome at hitting those, and he gets a lot of good looks. I mean, the Bucks should be generating a lot of those looks, and they are, and he's hitting them. So unlike Trent, who was shooting, I have it here somewhere, 23% the first 10 games.
Yeah. Yeah, that's terrible.
That's not good. But yeah, Prince has been. You can't ask for anything better more than that in terms of him shooting the ball.
Yeah.
But the tangent I was going to go on and just going to see what you think about it. Like, so Ajax is starting. He's still starting. He's playing like 21 minutes a game on average past 10 games. But there's certain games where Doc just sits him. And tonight against the Hawks was one of those games where I complained about it, but then I caught myself. He only had 7 minutes in the first half, but he had 3 fouls. It's like, okay, I guess he sat him because he was in foul trouble and whatever. He only had 4 minutes in the second half. And this is a game we lost and gave up, I don't know, 120 plus points, whatever it was. And Trae Young, you have a guard out there who's running around, like perimeter defense would be helpful at that point. Like, why is Ajax only getting 11 minutes?
Yeah, I don't know. And I think, you kind of nailed it too, because when you're watching Young, what is so annoying about the guy is he's just dribbling and he's got like a defender just following him around like a puppy. And he eventually like loses them. And it's like, that's where your play is. I mean, at one point today, he's dribbling under the basket with huge Brooke Lopez chasing after him. They set up a screen and all of a sudden, one of these guys that, what was it, Johnson and I don't know, all the Atlanta players was just right there for an easy assist and a dunk. And it's like, come on, man, you can't be doing stuff like that. Like you need a guard out there to be doing some of those things. So I don't know. I part of it is still the belief that Doc is too old school in the sense of, playing these veterans and, somebody maybe is like in his ear saying you have to be playing some of the guys that deserve the minutes versus like guys that are just, whatever. I don't know. It's just a guess, but, maybe that's Darvin Ham saying like, look, play the better players. And then Doc has to like override it and be like, no, I'm going to bring my vets in and they're going to get some more minutes or something. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. It could be kind of vet oriented, something like that. Additionally, I think it might be he's just too focused on offense. And so that's why AJ Green's getting more minutes. He's hitting these shots, spreading the floor. That's great. Ajax is getting less minutes because it's really like the defense is where he's making the impact. And if he's making stupid plays on offense, I think that Doc can't get it out of his head. Like you're mucking things up, or you have to take that layup, you have to take that wide open 3. And honestly, Ajax needs to get better at all that. And he's not even a bad shooter. It's like every time he takes a shot, the commentary is like, oh, it's Ajax, like they're leaving him open, like blah, blah, blah. It's like, I don't like why. I don't get where this comes from. He's a better shooter than a number of other guys on the team. He shot like 30, what did I say last week? 38% last year, something like that.
Sounds like something like that.
It's not like he's a terrible shooter. He's not like Giannis shooting 29% where you just leave him wide open. So I'm not even sure where that narrative comes from. But yeah, I think Doc is just can't get over that aspect of it. I still don't understand like how only 4 minutes in the second half is kind of like, what the hell's going on? You gave up 70 points in the first half. It's like, maybe we need more defense. So I don't get it. We'll see where that goes. I just he's such a difference maker. He's like the guy who makes the difference. And it's just, we're not using him enough, 20 21 minutes a game. Hey, that's better than the first 5 games. Ajax had 4 minutes per game and only played 2 games. So we're way better than where we started the season, but I still want more.
Yeah, and it's like, Trent has not been living up to what the expectations were by any stretch, and I think he knows that too, and he's probably got to be freaking out a little bit because he took a pay cut to come here and try to show that he's really good and chase a title and then maybe go for that bigger contract. But at this point, it's like, we don't owe him anything. Like, it's not like back in the day when Bobby was playing on a contract that was well below market value, and it was kind of like a, unofficial thing that it was like, look, man, just like play this out for us and do what you need to do, and we're going to reward you with the contract. Like, just you got to trust us. And sure enough, we did. We don't owe anything to him. So let Ajax play more and stop doing this type of thing, and maybe even sit with Trent and be like, let's change some aspects of your game, because Ajax, he is disruptive. He, the stat against Cade Cunningham when he was playing him in the previous Detroit game, he was on him for like, I don't know, let's just say 10 minutes or something like that. But he only had 3 points, 2 turnovers. It's like that right there is showing you what this guy can do. And you have enough scorers. You don't need another score. You don't need 5 scorers out there.
Yeah,
like, you can have a guy that's just a defensive guy.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, I don't know. We'll see what happens there. Yeah, the last thing I wanted to point out, you alluded to Bobby. That's something that's kind of interesting because there's so much talk about Bobby playing poorly and being kind of a big reason as to like why the Bucks are struggling and losing games, because we are, he's getting 25 minutes a game and it's all negative. I didn't look up his, plus minus or anything like that this time, but we talked about it last time and it was horrible. And so I'm not sure if it's improved or not, but his playing time hasn't really changed. It was 25 minutes a game, first 10 games, last 10 games, it's like 22. So that, and he started, and he's not a starter. I like the one thing that Doc changed is he did not start Bobby that second time Giannis was out. So that was kind of maybe one change. But other than that, like, Bobby's getting the same playing time. He's getting the same usage. He's taking those long twos. It's like things aren't really different with Bobby other than he is shooting better from 3. But again, he's not taking a ton of threes. He's not taking as many as we would like, I would say. So yeah, things haven't changed with Bobby yet. We're 9-1. Do you think that that was over, too much talk about that and just like there's not much there? Or do you think there still is something there that we really, if we want to like win a championship, like we need to address?
I do think there's still something there because the problem is, like, the Detroit game, Bobby was on fire. He was nailing threes. Today, his shot seemed off. And it seems like when you have a back-to-back, Bobby just has his shot one of the 2 games. And you have to figure out which one that is. I think the other thing with him is, one of the best qualities of him is getting the team and the crowd fired up. But it's also the biggest problem with him because he does things that you would expect as a veteran player. Like, you have to have a little bit of control over it. Like, yeah, talk some smack and get in people's heads and get the team fired up and be the guy that we know that if there's a fight, you're going to be the first guy in there ready to go. But, getting these texts all the time for just talking and not knowing when to shut up is bothersome. And that's the type of thing that's going to be like, if that type of crap is happening during the playoffs, that could cost us a game. And so that's the type of thing that I want somebody to be getting in his face and being like, look, I'm not telling you to not do what you're doing, but you've got to be smarter about the way that you're doing it and be in more control of your emotions. Get to the point where you're getting the other team so worked up that they're getting the texts, and you can just sit there with that smile on your face being like, yeah, I got to you. That's just what I did. But it seems like the opposite's working. He's jawing at these guys and then he keeps doing it and then he's getting texted. And I think that's the big problem with him. And I don't know if it's lack of consistency from game to game with the shot and the way that he's playing. But yeah, I mean, he's again to the PC thing. Like, he wasn't the reason we were losing. He's also not the reason we're winning. But it's just something that I if I were coaching, I'd be talking to him about this. And again, being like, you don't have to change anything, but you just have to control it a lot better.
Yeah, with these guys who get a lot of texts and are kind of wild cards, like I wonder, like how much control do they have? I wonder. Yeah, I guess we'll never know this answer, but
Yeah.
like a Draymond Green is one of those guys, and probably more so than Bobby. But there's guys who are known for that, and sometimes they get texts in the worst spots, and it's like, why are you doing this? And it's like, how much is it them playing it up, thinking that they're getting the energy going for their team? How much is it just like they're just emotional and just reacting, and they're not like no thought? Like, can they control themselves? Because tonight I think maybe you mentioned it because tonight Bobby had a tech, and it's just a really bad time where we're kind of making a little bit of a run, trying to get back in the game, and just a stupid tech. We just give them a free point and kind of killed the momentum as well. Yep. And it's like that did not help us.
Yeah, and even Marcus was talking about it. Marcus was saying like he didn't hate it, which is true. Like I didn't hate the tech, but it does change the momentum, and that is a huge thing. Like as you're coming back into this game and you're closing the lead and you're getting to the point where, yeah, we still have a chance here. That's not what you need to do. Like if you're going to get a tech when we're down big to fire the team up, okay, fine. That's one thing. But in the midst of us, like all of a sudden playing good defense, putting up some good shots, and then you just kind of just completely stop that, I have a problem with it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'll move on to the kind of one of the main differences that we're seeing here is the Bucks are just shooting a lot better. The 3-point shooting is the easy thing to look at, and we've heard Marquez and them talk about it. 43% the last 10 games. I think like 49% the last 5 games. I mean, that's almost 50% for 5-game period. That's pretty great. And then looking at the first 5 games, we shot 30.6%. And so it just, sometimes it is, either make or miss league, as they say. And so that is part of what's going on here. We just missed a lot of shots those first few games, and now we're making a lot of shots. Obviously I think it's more than that, but sometimes from one game to another, like sometimes that is it. And a couple of really, there's 2 guys who are, a lot better than they were in the beginning. Is Gary Trent Jr. was 23%. Now he's 53% the last 10 games. And Bobby went from 27 and he's up to 42 the last 10 games. So those couple of players are shooting a lot better, and Trent's taking a lot of threes. So that's probably a big reason why. Prince, I think, has been good like all 20 games for the most part.
Yeah, he's Prince isn't somebody that you assume is doing a great job, but he has been playing great, and Trent for sure has had a huge difference. I think the other thing is like, we talked about last time that seem like they're having more fun when they're playing, which of course, if you're on a winning streak, you're going to, but I feel like they're having better plays that they're running to getting better shot selection. A lot of people that watch an NBA game, it's like, oh, they're just chucking up shots. And yeah, there are stretches where that's happening. But there are also lots of times where the Bucks are really moving the ball, and when these shots are being taken, they're wide open or they're in the exact spot they need to be. That makes a huge difference too, because there are times today where I thought Bobby was going to go to his old ways and force a 3 with a hand in his face. And it's like, no. Like, you're a good shooter, especially from 3, but you're not that good to have a hand in your face and expect me to like think you're going to make that. So, that's a huge part. To your point, maybe Doc is just so offensive focused that's all they work on. And hey, it did the job. When we watched some of those early games where it was just like something's going on, like it's like the rim seems tight, or it seems like something's funky with the hoop in some way, and it's like it's not, but the shots just aren't there. So I'm happy to see it. It's just we can't get upset about one game tonight.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, the first 5 games we were 24th offensive rating, and the last 5 games were first offensive rating. So that's a big difference. And again, that 3-point shooting is probably a big part of it. Something I noticed, I don't know if there are any stats to kind of look at to try and find out like what's going on here, but I remember the first 5-10 games I was thinking like Giannis is just running into a crowd a lot of times with like the only thought in his head is I'm getting to the basket. I'm shooting, I'm going to try and score. and not kicking it out enough and not thinking like drive and kick. And it seems like that's happening more. It seems like he's creating more open looks than we were getting before. I think Dame's been pretty good at that all season. I haven't really seen a difference in that. I think he's been good all year. But Giannis is the one where I feel like he's been better. And the stats don't show that. The stats are like he's always incredibly awesome and he gets the similar amount of assists and like, everything's like always there for him. But at least watching it just seems like it's been easier. It's been a better flow with him on the floor than it was those first 5 to 10 games. Is that something? Do you think there's anything there? Have you seen that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's one of the great things about Giannis is that he is constantly evolving with his game. He easily could be a guy he's just going to, slash and try to dunk, and that's just what you get. But you can't average 33 points a game just doing that. Like, it's just not going to happen. So you have to be a playmaker, and he's definitely doing that. It's I don't know, recognizing that he has more trust in the guys that are around him or something. But I mean, his mid range is looking better. He's an exceptional passer, especially tonight. He had some amazing passes. So I mean, that's a huge thing for him too. He's really stepping up, and it's his team. That's the problem that I think anybody that looks at Dame is always going to have. They're like, when is Dame going to, really step up and be a leader? It's like, you can't be a leader. It's Giannis's team. Like, I don't care who you are. Like, you can have a voice and you can do what you want, but Giannis is putting in the work and he's got the respect of everybody already. Like, you have to be the number 2. And I think he struggled with it, but I think he's, to Dame's credit, is doing so much better with that role as well. Once we get Chris to come back, I mean, now you're starting to get a really lethal team where you can get Prince to be coming off the bench. You can get lineups where you have either Green or Ajax, or, you can play with the starting lineup so much more. Chris isn't the savior of this team, but it's going to completely change the way that we can set lineups moving forward. Right now, you look at, you got Giannis with 4 guys and then Dame with 4 guys, and then the number of times that they're actually playing together is minimized because it's like you just have to play it that way. But you throw Chris in there, and I think I mentioned this even on another episode, like, that's going to make a huge impact, and teams are just not going to be able to prepare for that.
Yeah, and you can have at least a couple minutes with Giannis and Dame on the bench and someone out there to handle the ball and initiate offense. Yeah, there have been times where they're both sitting and it's been pretty ugly. But yeah, I mean, to your point, without Chris, I didn't write this down for some reason. I think we're the 7th rated offensive rating in the NBA. That's without Chris. And the past 5 games were the 1st. The past 10 games were 5th offensive rating. So our offense has been great without Chris. And he's like the main thing he's adding is offense. I mean, he's been a good defender his whole career, but he's, kind of dropped a little bit the past couple of years after these injuries. So it's really like offense is the main thing we're thinking of with Chris Middleton. And I mean, we do need him. I would say it's not like we don't need him, but we're really good without him too.
Yeah, it's great. And, people forget he's one of the best mid-range shooters in the league, not just like on the Bucks. So you go from having, Giannis performing the way that he always does, and you get, guys like Brooke and Bobby who, they shoot threes plenty, but they're also like paint guys. And then we have a lot of 3-point shooters. You throw Chris in the mix where he can do a lot of that stuff. Like, this is going to be pretty interesting. I just hope he can come back sooner than later. But as long as he comes back healthy, that's really all that we have to worry about. Look at the NBA Cup, Emirates Cup, whatever it's called now. We just walked through that first round. We didn't even have Chris. So, like, I don't know. I think expectations should be starting to get to like a peak level at this point.
Yeah, that mid-range comment is pretty interesting because I think Marquez Johnson said today that Giannis is 2nd in the league in mid-range shooting percentage. Wow. I assume he was referring to. And last time we did mention that he's shooting it really well, and he's shooting a ton of them compared to what he used to do, which is actually a pretty interesting. For a player to shift that much with where he's shooting from on the floor, with just completely limiting those threes because he sucked, and he I guess realized it and just said, I'm not going to force it anymore, and instead decided I'm going to be awesome at mid-range. But what's interesting to think about is you have Giannis, you have Dame, who's taking a decent amount of mid range. You have Bobby, who I want to take less mid range. And then we're going to add Chris Middleton, who like takes one of the most mid range and is very good at it. So if Giannis keeps this percentage up, then you add Chris Middleton. Then and Dame has a not the best percentage, but he gets fouled so often. So like all three of those guys are pretty high. Those are actually high quality shots if they're shooting it at that percentage. And with Dame getting fouled that much, and teams today in the NBA are like, let's guard threes and at the rim. And so there probably is a lot of opportunity in the mid range. And if, that might be kind of like going against the trend, might actually help us. As long as they're hitting the shots, then it might be a good thing. But they can like get to their spots probably easier because of the way teams play defense, unless they're changing it, unless we do it all season and teams kind of change like, hey, the Bucks actually don't take a ton of threes. They're, these guys take mid range, maybe they change their defense. But in general, with the way teams play defense, maybe that's an opportunity, as opposed to a negative, as opposed to like, hey, we have to shoot more threes because that's what everyone does. Maybe it's a positive since we have some of the best mid range guys.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think so. It's this is the type of stuff where you go from everyone was calling for John Horst's head last year to this is what it's all about. Like these things start to gel, and I don't know. I think we're, like I said, expectations should start to be peaking. As long as we don't have to deal with any major injuries, get Chris healthy, like this is going to be, it's going to unlock a phenomenal defense that maybe we can get back to those numbers we were seeing under Griff last year, where we were averaging something like 127 points a game or something crazy.
Yeah. Well, let's shift our focus. I wanted to talk a little bit about Damian Lillard, and I've especially including last year, just hearing a lot of talk on the national podcast, ESPN, TNT, whatever. Most of the conversation, most of the talk about Dame is that he's not that good anymore. Like the impression you get from the talk about Damian Lillard is that he's like an average, sometimes even below average player. It's kind of the impression that you get from hearing these guys talk about him. Certainly not talked about as a, all NBA, top 15, top 20 type player. But I'm watching him this year through 20 games and he's looked pretty awesome. I thought he's playing great. Like this guy's awesome. He's a really good point guard. I want him on my team. He's a smart player. The shots he takes maybe aren't all high quality shots, but for him, they're not. It's kind of like Steph Curry, but not as good as Steph Curry, where it's like he can actually make those shots. Like he's spreading the court that much, and he will make those shots enough for it to make sense. And his 3-point percentage is, not in the 40s, partially because he's taking a lot of really difficult threes. Anyhow, overall, I just thought eye test wise, he's looked really good. So I'm kind of just like, why is this negative talk continuing? Of course, how do these guys, first of all, like how do these guys watch enough games? Like they probably don't, like how many of each team's games are these guys who it's their job to write about NBA? Like I don't blame them. How can you possibly watch that much basketball? So some of these teams that, they have to just kind of watch a few games here and there and just form an opinion. So I guess I don't totally blame them, but I think they're kind of missing the boat a little bit with how good Damian Lillard is this year. And so what I did was I looked and I compared him to Jalen Brunson, who is talked about as, top 5, top 10, we'll say top 10 player in the league, fringe MVP candidate. He's that guy, right? Like everyone talks about Jalen Brunson like he's great, and he is very good. I'm not even necessarily disagreeing with that conversation. But just comparing Dame to Jalen Brunson after the first 20 games this season, they're very similar. Looking at the stats here, and actually, maybe the other thing I should say is the reason Damian Lillard is not as good, perhaps, is because he sucks at defense, which I will agree with. Like he's not a good defender. At the same time, a lot of these guys are not good defenders.
Mhm.
You know, like it's not like Steph Curry is known as a great defender. Like, yes, he puts in good effort. He's not bad, but he's not a good defender. You know, and like a lot of these guys are pretty bad. Like Trae Young, how good of a defender is Trae Young? I don't know. We could list a whole bunch of guys. Many of these point guards are pretty bad. It's kind of rare to be a good defender and like a top offensive player. And so Jalen Brunson, similarly, is not a good defender. He's not known. People don't talk about him like that, and he isn't a good defender. So I thought that was another reason it was a good comparison. Additionally, he has almost the same usage rate, so we're not comparing him to someone who doesn't handle the ball as much. So comparing these two guys, first of all, on defense, Damian Lillard has more rebounds, steals, blocks. So like every defensive category of just kind of like traditional category, okay, Damian Lillard is actually like performing better. There's some advanced stat that I do not understand. It's called box plus minus. And so there's like a defensive box plus minus. And apparently it looks at just kind of the box score stats and compares it to the league average. Okay, whatever that is, Damian Lillard is 1 point better than Jalen Brunson. So he's seemingly a better defensive player. So we'll just put that to the side. Like, okay, we're not going to be able to blame defense in this comparison, right? So now let's just look at the offense. Well, offensively, if you look at just kind of basic stats, it seems like Jalen Brunson looks like he's a little bit better. He's shooting 49%. He's shooting 41% from three, while Dame is 45 overall and 37 from three. So it's like, okay, well, Brunson's a better shooter. But if you get a little analytical about it, Dame takes more threes and is a better free throw shooter and gets more free throws. And so when you look at something like true shooting or points per shot attempt, they're actually like almost the same. And actually Dame's a little bit better. And Dame has a better player efficiency rating. So if you look into some of these advanced stats, Dame's actually a little bit better. So like overall, they are, I'd say at worst, pretty much having the same offensive season. And Dame is a little bit better on defense. So why is it that Jalen Brunson is an MVP candidate and like no one talks about Damian Lillard?
Well, there's several reasons I can tell you right now. So number one, people are
Okay.
idiots. Okay. So somebody that will turn on an NBA game and they see, Dame put up 25 points. Or like, I thought you said Dame's good. It's like, what are you talking about? Oh, you only had 25 points. Okay. First of all, I can't talk to you because you're an idiot. Number two, it is definitely this recency bias where it's like, oh, well, it's Milwaukee. Who the hell watches Milwaukee? Nobody gives a shit about Milwaukee. Do people even watch these games? This is what these talking heads are talking about. Like, I don't even know if there's anything. I'll go back to the point that some person took my sister out to a Mexican restaurant in California because they didn't think there was Mexican food in the state of Wisconsin. People are morons. Okay. So, when Dame was on the West Coast, nobody was watching him because those games started at 10:30 at night, and outside of a small little group of people, like, what the hell? I'm not watching that game. Like, I'm just not staying up for it. So then Dame would all of a sudden have a 60-point game, and you're like, oh shit, Dame is like the best guy. Like, holy crap. It's like, all right, well, this is where we're getting lost here. It's like, okay, great NBA players are not putting up 50 points a game. That's why when someone does put up 50 or more, it's a big deal. But, it's like, I understand you can't watch all these NBA games, but when your job is to watch college sports, when your job is to watch sports, and you're like, well, I just can't watch a lot of NBA, that's your job to watch the NBA. Like, what else you got to do? Like, you're watching old Seinfeld episodes, and it's really cutting into my time with the NBA here. So my little tangent on that is that, number one, yeah, people are idiots. And the Knicks are, Villanova 2.0. That's their thing. They get, Cat. And so all of a sudden they're the big story. The Bucks start out bad. So all of a sudden they're washed up. And then people just start to not pay attention to the Bucks anymore. That's why the same thing is when you go 9-1 over a 10-game stretch. What's the first thing that you hear? Well, they're not playing anybody.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You know what? Whatever. Like, I can't win talking these conversations with people. So that's a huge part of it. It's just this narrative that people are just morons, and that's as simple as it can be sometimes. it's who do you want to watch? It's, is LeBron still great? Of course he's still great, but he's not MVP candidate. So, people can't say like, oh, well, LeBron sucks. Well, he doesn't suck. He's just not LeBron that you remember from 15 years ago because, guess what? He's older. He's got a different game now. I don't know. That's kind of my response to that.
Yeah, I think you're right, though. It's like, what are you comparing it to? And so if we're saying, hey, it's LeBron James. He's like the greatest player, second greatest player of all time. And then he's having a season where he's not a top 10 player. It's like, LeBron James sucks. Like, why are we even talking about it? And so similarly, we have Damian Lillard, who's a top 75 all-time player, right? Like, that's who he is. And he did not have as good of a season as you'd expect last year. Coming to this season, the Bucks start 2-8, and the expectations were the Bucks are going to compete. You're maybe a tier below Boston is probably the typical opinion out there. But, we're going to be in that like second tier with supposedly Philadelphia and, the Knicks and the Cavs. And so we don't meet that expectation. And so because of that, Damian Lillard sucks. Unless he's doing something you can't ignore, just like out of this world, is like the best player in the league, then it's just going to be part of that narrative. Like, oh, well, the Bucks suck. Dame's 34. He's getting old. It's just kind of an easy talking point to go to. I think that age is actually a big part of it. Like if he was 28, I don't think we'd really be hearing much about it. I think it'd be fine, but since he's 34 and aging and the trade, we made the trade. So now that, again, the expectation, we made the trade. So now we're supposed to be winning championships. Anything less than that is you're a failure. And so there's just kind of a lot of pressure and there's just like a lot built into how well is Damian Lillard doing. Like if the Bucks aren't like the number 1 or number 2 seed, and if Damian Lillard isn't, doesn't have like as good of a stats as he always does, then it's a failure and he sucks and he's, there's no coming back. He's on his way out. He's a declining veteran. And so yeah, I think that's
one thing I'll add on that is, a good LeBron debate is when was LeBron the best? And I think a lot of people would maybe argue that the Miami years were probably the best LeBron that you saw. Let's just say for this example, it was.
Okay.
And let's just say he was there for 5 years. I don't remember exactly if he was 4 or 5 or what it was. Okay. He won 2 championships, right? If Dame is here for 4 years and we win 2 championships, is he a failure? Not at all.
Definitely not.
So, when LeBron went to Miami and he said he was going to win 7 straight championships and they were all like, oh my God. And then he didn't win it the first year. Like, I don't think the narrative was as loud as it is for Dame coming into Milwaukee and having 1 year with 2 coaches, going through a divorce, having 0 time to gel with your new team. Again, I'm not trying to come up with a bunch of excuses, but it's like, let's like pump the brakes on this being like an absolute failure when most people consider LeBron's best time was in Milwaukee and he didn't even win it right away. Like, I think that's some of the steps too. I'll look at social media and you'll see somebody and the video is titled "Why I Can't Watch the NBA Anymore." It's like, I'm not even going to watch it because you're going to take a 5-second clip of something from one game and like whatever. Like I truly think, like, especially as I get older, people that don't watch the NBA are really missing out on stuff. Like the number of people I go and talk to and I'm like, oh, do you like sports? Like, yeah, I like the Packers, and then probably the Brewers, and I don't know, maybe I'll catch a Bucks game. It's like, all right, well, like, I'm not going to tell you your order is wrong by any stretch, but like, don't dismiss the Bucks. Like, this is NBA basketball. It's the best. Like, if you like college basketball, which I used to be the mindset of college basketball is more exciting. It's not. College basketball is great. Like, basketball in general is just super fun to watch. It is completely different, and the NBA is significantly better. You just aren't watching. And, I think that's just this part of this. Just people are just not putting it in the time and the effort and understanding kind of what they're watching here. And they expect just absolute peak greatness every single time. Like a guy, oh, he's only shooting 50%. What do you mean only 50%? What do you want him to shoot? 100%? Like, is that what you want? I don't know.
I think, just maybe going on a tangent a little bit. I think the thing about the NBA that's great is the overall, taking NBA overall. If you just jump into one game, you just watch one random regular season NBA game, yeah, it might kind of suck. It might not be the greatest game. The intensity might not be up there where you want it to be for 48 minutes. And if you catch a random college basketball game, there's a decent chance it's going to be, pretty intense. Players giving it their all, like all 40 minutes for that game. Like I just watched the Wisconsin-Michigan game. Mm-hmm. Great game. Like just, intense. Had like that playoff atmosphere, so to speak, right?
Yeah.
You usually don't get that in an NBA regular season game. Now you'll get it in the playoffs. I'd say like take a random NBA playoff game. I think you're going to the general basketball fan, I think would be like happy with that and be like, oh, this is great. So if you're not fully invested, if you're not like really following the team and following the league, I can understand that it's kind of hard to get into. Maybe even, I'm not sure if this is a good analogy. We can ask our soccer friends, but maybe the Premier League is kind of similar where it's the whole Premier League and like maybe the history of it, but also just like the way that teams can like drop out of the league, into, be demoted. I don't know. I'm not doing this a service to all these soccer fans out here, but
somewhere there's a soccer fan getting really upset right now.
Exactly. But the Premier League, to me, like the fascination of it, and like why I'm somewhat interested, like, oh, it'd be cool to be a Premier League fan, is if I was like fully invested. But if I'm just halfway invested, it's just not that great. It's like I need to be fully in or fully out. And I think the NBA might be kind of similar, with a caveat that I think you can jump into the NBA playoffs. I think a lot of people probably do that. And I think that works, and that's fine if you're like, I'm too busy to kind of think about NBA basketball. But once April comes, for 3 months, I'm going to be really into it. Like, I think that's fair and that's doable. Where the Premier League actually doesn't, I don't really think that has a comparable there, because they just kind of have a season. They don't have like a playoffs really. Maybe Champions League. I don't know. Again, sorry, soccer fans. But anyhow, that's kind of a tangent. But I can see why people would say college basketball is better than NBA basketball. But if you invest and if you're fully into the NBA, it's clearly better.
Yes. And I think you kind of explained my thought way better. And I think that's the same thing, sticking with the soccer thing for a minute though. It's why you can watch like a soccer TV show like Ted Lasso and be invested in the game, or like I watched the David Beckham documentary and I was like, oh, this is pretty. But if I put on a random soccer game, I'll be like, why did I even turn this on? It's like, I don't understand it. But it's a little on me to be like, I can't just say it's shit because I turned it on, don't know anything that's going on. Like, that is the problem. And I think that is part of what is going on with the NBA. You know, the NFL, you can go to any game at any time and you're going to get typically a good game that you can get behind and figure out what's going on. And, a lot of these college players are never going to play again. So that's why they're putting everything they can into it. And NBA players know it's a long season. If I don't have it this game, that's all right. There's another game. I can rest this one and come back another time. Like, there is a lot of those differences there. So, I mean, I'll support that. And I think you get an A for explaining my point a little bit better than I did.
Excellent. I'm not sure where we started, but maybe this is a good transition to the flop corner, which I don't know what you're going to say, but you got something for us this week for flop corner.
Yeah, so we did kind of start to touch on this a little bit with what we're talking about, but it's kind of the media and the people that clearly are not following the NBA. And it really pisses me off with some of the stories that are kind of coming out there. So one of the things that we've kind of gotten pissed at in the past is all the stories of, well, Giannis wants out of Milwaukee. If this doesn't happen, Giannis is going to ask for a trade. And if this doesn't happen, Giannis is going to ask for a trade. And it gets to the point where, it's like, well, Oh yeah, I forgot to mention that. Yeah, Giannis never ever said he wanted to leave, and that's not actually a thing. And well, most people know that's not a thing, but it's clickbait. It's the way to get it happen. So the thing that pissed me off, this is now several weeks old at this point, and Philadelphia, which you kind of mentioned, is having a shitty season. But there was a story that I read that Tyrese Maxey called out Joel
Joel Embiid.
Embiid in a
Hmm.
meeting, right? And in the article, they talked about how they have this relationship that they call each other out and they really set each other up for, making sure that they're doing the right things and, really showing their roles within the locker room, right? And so the article was going on to say, like, Maxey was the guy to call him out because Embiid will respect Maxey being the one to do it. Every article after that for at least a week was Maxey calls out Embiid is for,
Hmm.
the locker room is broken. Now, fast forward, and this team is not playing well at all. But it just got me so mad because it's like, okay, well, you took a tiny bit of a story and you're turning it into this like absolute turmoil. And like, I get it's the way that people do it now. There's the number of people that, I just read a headline, I didn't actually read the story, and all these types of things. But it's just like, I'm getting really sick of this crap where it's like, I don't know, like understand your story, have a little bit of integrity with your article, and stop just doing like TMZ clickbait crap just to get people to click on your article that's probably written terribly, and no one's ever going to come back there again because you suck at your job. So let me just write a crappy headline so someone clicks on it and I can say, oh, I did my job. But like it's the thing that just bothers me of you know the Giannis trade talk, which was never true, and we knew it was never true, but it was still out there and it was discussed all the time. So then you put it over to Philadelphia, where it's like, yes, that happened, but totally like in a, hey, we're teammates and this is what we have to do. We have to step up and we have to call each other out on these things. To well, they hate each other and they're infighting and there's a whole problem. So I don't know. It just really pissed me off, and I'm just over it.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that makes me think of is, sports journalism. I feel like sometimes sports journalists don't care enough about sports. And they're so anxious to have this story, this narrative about something that is nothing to do with the sport that we're all watching and like getting all worked up about. No, it's about this high school gossip situation
Yeah.
with Maxey and Embiid, and he ratted him out, and making up a story out of nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Like you said, actually Embiid and Maxey have a pretty good relationship, and they are known to call each other out on things. And this wasn't out of the ordinary, and this was actually part of a longer conversation. This was just one little nugget of that conversation, which they had like respect for each other in. And the sports media pulls this thing out and it's like, I'm gonna make a big dramatic story about this. As opposed to, let's talk about any of the sports stuff. Why is Philadelphia 2-13 or whatever their record is? And like, let's talk about the analytics, the what's happening with Embiid hurt. What can they do better? Blah blah blah. No. What's really intriguing is this high school gossip story, and sports journalists love that shit. They just eat it up, and maybe they're right. Maybe people overall like it too, and maybe they get more clicks, and that's why it happens. And America is just a cesspool of losers. Perhaps that's it. That's definitely a possibility. But I agree with you that, yeah, sports journalism is really annoying a lot of times with that stuff. And again, I think some of them are just like so obsessed about non-sports stories. It's like, why are you in sports journalism? Maybe you should do other journalism or just write other stuff if you're so excited about this stuff that happens everywhere, all over the place, not just here in sports, especially when you're pulling it out of thin air and essentially making it up.
Well, when you watch like wrestling in the 90s, Vince McMahon coined the phrase sports entertainment, right? It was an athletic event that had stories behind it. He knew what he was doing, right? He was putting on a show to appease to that. The problem is that has just evolved into the way that sports is viewed by so many people now. And maybe we're just a bunch of old men that are like, I wish it was a different way. But you look at it like my nemesis, ESPN, which has ruined themselves, and they're just a garbage network, where it's like, okay, hey, we're going to have a football game on Monday. Let's spend $30 million to have Snoop and Chris Stapleton sing a song about the game. Are you fucking kidding me? What? What? Are you insane? Like, what are you talking about? And they're like, oh, you know what, Fox, we're going to one-up you. We're going to pay Tom Brady almost $40 million to talk about the game. Because he was such a good player, he's got to be great. Well, guess what? He sucks. And now you're stuck with that because you're spending money at all these other places. Stephen A. Smith getting, what, $30 million from ESPN or some obscene
20.
number? 20? It's $18, $19 million too much. Like, the guy should be like, I get $1 million to talk about sports. This is fantastic. Like, Stephen A. Smith, shut the hell up. Like, you talk way too much about nonsense. You're not always right. All we have is these talking head shows where you're not even talking about sports anymore. You're just arguing like a bunch of little bitches, and you don't even know what you're talking about. That's
it. We broke Brett. The second thing I wanted to say to that, though, is the Giannis trade conversation. I think we should talk about this for at least a minute, because there's been a lot of that talk out there over the past, since, because the Bucks had a terrible start. And so, of course, they're going to trade Giannis, which was the conversation before we won a championship forever. Well, Giannis is going to leave. What the hell? Why are these people so obsessed with Giannis playing for a different team? What, like, is anybody else in this league getting that treatment? Why not?
I can't think of another player that's like that at all. And I think it all goes back to the 1970s with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar wanting to leave Milwaukee because he didn't feel that his religion was being respected in the city of Milwaukee, and he thought it was a racist city. And so he wanted to leave and go to a more diverse city, which would be something like LA or New York. I get that. I understand that. That's 50 years ago. Like, I don't, like, the Bucks organization has bent over backwards to make Giannis happy. And I can't imagine that this guy's like, screw you guys. Like, I mean, we've talked about this before. Giannis still shops at Costco and drives a 1990 something Suburban. You think this guy wants to be in LA or Miami? Like, come on. Like, none of that makes sense to his personality. Just because you are on the East Coast and you would never live in Milwaukee, that doesn't mean that people don't want to live in Milwaukee and don't like the organization and don't want to play here. Like, it's an old debate that I remember having probably with you 25 years ago, but it was like, if you were amazing at basketball or football or something like that, would you want to go? I think the question was, if you were amazing at basketball, would you want to go to a program like Duke or North Carolina, where you have an established coach and program and you could be somebody that helps them get to a championship? Or would you rather be the guy that took Wisconsin to a championship or to this small school to the championship for the first time or something like that? And I think Giannis has that mentality of, I want to make Milwaukee this great basketball town. And I think that's what he's living up to. And he's getting other guys that come here that want to stay. I mean, Brook Lopez played in the East Coast, the West Coast, and now he's in Milwaukee, and he seems to absolutely love it. Dame was on the West Coast and wanted to play in Miami, and he's in Milwaukee now and seems to, as far as I know, love it. It's just because they don't think this place is like, why would anybody want to live in Milwaukee? Well, you know what? Leave once in a while and check it out. Like, it's not a shithole. Like, it's fine. Like, come on. I think that's part of it.
Yeah, and actually, so before I was talking about Damian Lillard and how he's not getting the respect he deserves with how well he's playing. He's like, why isn't, like, if we're being realistic, if we're being real sports journalists and thinking about what could actually happen here and what makes sense for the Bucks to do if they're 2-8, if this continues, if they're in Philadelphia's spot, if we're 3-17 or whatever, what's realistic is trying to trade Damian Lillard, not Giannis.
Right.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, if you think about it from the Bucks perspective, why would the go-to be like, let's trade Giannis immediately? Let's blow this up immediately when we have like the best / second best player in the NBA with at least, 3-4 good years ahead, I would think, with anyone kind of what they're expecting. Like, why would that be the case when you have Damian Lillard, who's 34, and since the trade, the team hasn't done as well? It's like, that's the thing that, right? You'd think maybe let's do that, and maybe we can still be a really good team if we get a decent piece back, and we're kind of, obviously taking a step backwards. But if we're in that scenario of this is nightmare, we got to blow it. We have no draft pick till 2031, and we're, a horrible record. We're gonna get we're gonna lose our top 10 pick, just nightmare scenario. What are you gonna do? You're gonna trade Damian Lillard, who, by the way, is playing excellent and should get value back. And it's like the media is actually telling us all that he doesn't get value back. Like, how are you going to trade that contract? Well, you're going to trade that contract because he's fucking awesome. That's how. It's like, why don't we hear that from anybody? I don't know.
It's Philly's playing like shit right now, but is the talk that they should trade Embiid because this is now Paul George's team? I don't think I hear that. I mean, no. I could be making it up, but I think it's all, let's be honest here. One of the worst organizations is the Brooklyn Nets. They made a terrible trade with Boston to get washed up Kevin Garnett and washed up Paul Pierce for like the future 10 years of their organization. Finally get around it and bring in Kevin Garnett, James Harden, Ben Simmons, and then they kept Ben Simmons.
Kyrie Irving.
Kyrie Irving. And then after all that, they're like, you know what? Ben Simmons, he's the one that we want. Like, okay, so we're going to now take advice from the Brooklyn Nets? Like, come on. Like, this is ridiculous. Like, we got to stop this. It's like, okay, the Spurs are starting out slow. Let's trade Wembanyama because, I don't know, the guy's he's got trade value and, we want Jeremy Sojan to, like, this is his team. What are you talking about? Like, shut the hell up.
Yeah, a quick thing on the Embiid. There's no talk about trading Embiid ever. I don't think there ever has been, which is crazy talk. But
it is kind of surprising, actually.
Yeah, it is. And maybe that's actually says a little bit something about who Giannis is and who Embiid is. Like, maybe it's a little bit of respect for how good Giannis is, and actually Embiid isn't that great. Maybe he's a great regular season player. Maybe he got an MVP. But do you want him on your team in the playoffs? Are you sure you want to give up your, a max contract to that guy? And I think it's questionable. Well, with Giannis, there's no question. He's incredible. Everybody wants him. And so maybe spinning it the other way, it's actually somewhat respect that we get all this made up shit talk about trading Giannis at any, like, if there's just like a sliver of possibility. Oh, the Bucks, they lost 2 games in a row. Maybe we should bring up that Giannis trade talk again. I mean, it's honestly like ridiculous how much there has been of him either leaving or Bucks trading him the whole career. It's either something about Milwaukee or it's a combination of something about Milwaukee and how good Giannis is to deserve that, to get that respect.
Yeah, it's really the only story that should be around a Giannis trade is how many teams have players that they would not consider trading for Giannis. Like, how many players can you get to before you're like, yeah, I wouldn't make that trade? Like,
yeah,
Wembanyama is 22, let's say. Like,
he's like,
okay, you
19,
probably,
20, right?
Yeah, okay, maybe even younger than that. It's like, okay, yeah, you probably don't want to trade for a near 30 Giannis unless you think you're going to win right now. And I still think Wembanyama is a very good chance of being able to be a top performer soon. I don't think you're one player away. But I think you start to find out there's not that many players that you can list that are not going to be somebody that the GM would be like, yeah, let me start thinking about this.
Yeah, that would be a good exercise. Maybe we should jump into the next week. I mean, off the top of my head, I'm thinking Wemby, I would say Chet Holmgren probably, Anthony Edwards, Shea, Gilgeous Alexander. I'm just trying to think who are the really, really, really good young players. How Luka, maybe, how old is Luka? He's got to be a lot younger.
Yeah. I think he's 25.
You're not going to trade Jokic. Anyway, so, is it more than 10? I wonder.
That's a good over-under. Yeah. I don't know. That's a good, maybe we talk about it. If we don't have something to talk about one day, we'll talk about that.
Yeah, we're over an hour now. We still have to get to mailbag, so maybe we'll jump into that next time.
All right, let's go to the mailbag.
So we got a longtime listener, first-time emailer. At least that's what he said. Here's what it is. There have been some great nicknames for Bucks players over the years and some good ones on the current team. What are your all-time top 3 nicknames? If you could give a nickname to a current player who either doesn't have one or who has a lackluster one, what would it be? So I have a number of nicknames written down here. Did you have an immediate response, or should I kind of list some names here?
Well, I'll probably test my knowledge to see just who I can name right off the top of my head because I did not prep for this. I mean, obviously, the Greek Freak is just a fantastic nickname.
Yes.
New edition Derry Bird is fantastic. That's just such a great one. Derry Bird. I do like Derry Bird. I did like AJ Automatic a little bit more, but now I'm like really enjoying Derry Bird quite a bit.
I have not come around to Derry Bird.
Okay.
AJ
Splash
Automatic,
Mountain,
I think is great.
I like AJ Automatic. Yeah.
Yeah. See, Derry Bird. I want to get into this for a second.
Sure.
Derry Bird, which I'm like, why is it Derry Bird? I mean, he's a Midwestern guy. I guess that's why it's Derry.
Yeah.
Why is it Bird? I'm like, oh, Larry Bird.
Right.
I'm like, I got it. But it's like Larry Bird because he's white. Does he look like him? I guess is that it?
I guess. I think
he
kind of looks like
white,
I think it's mainly because he's white and can shoot, and he's a little like Larry Bird. I guess it's quick tangent on that. It's the same narrative. So like, Ben, here's my little old man rant for a second. Like, current generation kids are dumb and they're stupid and they're dumb. They believe that nothing ever existed before them. They're starting to question that Helen Keller never existed. I don't know if you know that, but I brought this up to our friend Bob. He immediately texts his son who's in college, and he's like, "Yeah, I've heard that. I guess she must be real." It's like, what? Are you kidding? Like, you think we all just made this up? But along those lines, there are people that think Larry Bird was trash, like not a good player. Oh my God, 100%. Like making fun of like, oh, this is what the NBA used to be like. This guy used to be good. It's like, he was amazing. Like, it's not just like the NBA was bad and this is like the best we could offer. He was amazing. And he played during like Magic and Michael and like, what are you talking about? So I think that's a little bit of it. I have to say I did not like Derry Bird at first. I am coming around to it. Splash Mountain is pretty good for Brooke Lopez. Cash Money for Chris Middleton. Those aren't my favorites, but those are.
How do you think you spell cash?
I'm assuming with a K, a $H.
Okay, you're right. Yeah, KH, a $H.
Oh,
is what at least that's what I found.
That first H is throwing me big time.
I think it's because it's Chris. KHRIS, and
that's true.
So that's the deal. $sign for the S though.
Yeah, I figured that. Let's see, what else can I think of right now? Big Dog, Glenn Robinson. Obviously, that was fantastic. Oh man, I don't remember Ray Allen having a nickname.
I do not either, and that didn't come up when I searched it.
Sam Cassell kind of looked like an alien, but I don't think that like really caught on anywhere.
Perplexity said the alien was his nickname.
Oh, interesting.
Which is what we all called him.
Yeah, we did. I just didn't know that was like something that stuck at all.
Enough people called him.
I guess so.
It's on the internet somewhere, and Perplexity found it. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't recall. Well, actually, one of my favorite nicknames is, and I believe this was Kurt, one of his favorite Bucks of all time, Yi Jillian. Remember that Asian guy?
I do not remember.
Do you remember that guy? So you might remind me. So his nickname was the Chairman. Okay, do you know why he was the chairman?
No.
Okay. So this is during when like Yao Ming was like big, right? So this guy Yi, I think it was just YI, was coming
Okay,
over
I
from
remember that
Asia,
player actually. Yeah.
and he didn't want to play for the Bucks. He said, "I don't want to play for the Bucks," so naturally we draft him. And he didn't show up to the combine, but he has a workout video where he posted up against a folding chair and was showing his skills against a metal folding chair. And people called him the chairman. And I thought that was one of the funniest things
Yeah.
ever, because he also was, newsflash, not very good. So that's a nickname that I liked a lot.
That's great. I mean, that's in the top 5, top 3 right now. Yeah, some other ones are the president, Malcolm Brogdon.
Oh yeah, I never loved that one.
Yeah, I kind of like it. I liked it because it just made sense. Like I heard it, I'm like,
it did.
Oh yeah, he is the president.
Yeah.
I had never heard this one. Eric Bledsoe was the Bled Show.
That's dumb.
And I don't even really get it.
Was Eric Bledsoe good? I thought we always just hated him. So why would we call him the Bled Show?
Definitely hated him.
Yeah.
This is a fun one, and this one sounds like
poor Eric Bledsoe, by the way. We just like talk about nicknames and be like, oh, by the way, Eric Bledsoe, we hate you and hated you. So just throwing that out there.
Yeah, this nickname doesn't sound. It sounds more like Chip and Dale's, something like that. Maybe Andrew Bogut, the Thunder from Down Under.
Yeah, I never liked that one. That was dumb.
Yes,
it seems like those are the ones that are like, hey, he's from Australia. Let's show how ignorant we are. Like, what's in Australia? I don't know. Down under. There we go. What rhyme? It's dumb. It's just
Andrew Bogut, another shrimp on the Barbie. Dunks it home.
The dingo almost ate his baby on that one.
Oh yeah, that's fun. We need more Australians on the Bucks.
We do. We should have thought of these with Joe Ingles. Like, I think he was Australian. Yeah. We should have been. Damn,
missed opportunity. Okay, I looked up Marquez Johnson. Did you know any of his? Do you know his nickname?
I did not know. Maybe I know one, but I don't know off the top of my head. So maybe we'll see. Okay,
one of them said MJ, which I was like, that doesn't sound like a real thing, and anyway.
Right.
But the first MJ, no, but Slammer was apparently his nickname.
Oh no, never heard that.
Because he dunked it a lot, I guess. Fun fact on Marquez Johnson, though, he coined the term "point forward," and the quote is like, that this is true when you hear this quote, like, oh yeah, he said that. He said, okay, so instead of a point guard, I'm a point forward. It's like that. I can just see Marquez Johnson saying
that. Oh, for sure. Yeah. He's been amazing the last 2 games, by the way. Like, sorry to Steve Nowak, but Marcus has been just amazing the last two games. He is just one of the reasons you got to watch NBA basketball, because he's too funny.
We have pretty good announcer, especially for not nationally known announcers. I recently got League Pass and I've been watching a few games, and like the Clippers and I don't know, another team, maybe probably the Knicks or someone. Some of these teams have like national guys doing their games. It's like, okay, well, yeah, they're great. But then, most of the teams don't. They're just people you've never heard of. And, I'd say the average person tuning into the Bucks game on League Pass, they don't know who these people are. I'd say that we have pretty good announcers for, kind of lower, people who aren't on the national stage. They're pretty good. And we have like a pretty good, like, I'm okay with our FanDuel broadcast overall. I think it's pretty decent. We get some stats up there, and I'm not really thinking about how it's bad, because I'm hearing on the GOAT podcast they're talking about how some of these are just horrible. Yeah. So maybe I'll find some of those as now I have League Pass. But anyway, Bucks doing a pretty good job.
Yeah, I like their team. I think they're pretty good. I mean, I still would lobby for. I like how NBA League Pass sometimes you can like switch what audio you're listening to, whether it's like the home team, away team, in arena. I think we need to add double dribble Bucks for one of the audio options you can have. We don't have to just do Bucks games. We can talk about other teams, but we will probably talk mainly Bucks still. So just throwing that out there for the NBA to consider.
Yeah, if you have an Australian player on your team, you should really think about
Call us up. Call us up. We are cheap, I promise you. I mean, compared to others, it's still going to cost you quite a bit. But...
Well, if I have to give top 3 Bucks nicknames, I'm going to say Greek Freak, Splash Mountain, and Big Dog. That's my top 3.
I would agree. I think those are perfect.
Okay. I was looking at other nicknames in general, and kind of maybe I'll just go off some of these bad nicknames. So Kevin Durant, the Slim Reaper, or Durantula. Those are the 2 nicknames, the 2 like first nicknames that showed up for him. Like we couldn't come up with a better nickname for Kevin Durant.
Yeah, the thing is, KD is the only one that you can think of, but he wasn't the original KD or the original KD even for the Suns. Kevin, what's that guy's name? So why can't you think of it? From the 90s. The guy he played with Charles Barkley. The point guard.
Yes.
I could picture him, but I can't think of his name. Anyway, he was
some
KD
guy
too.
KD.
Yeah. I don't like Slim Reaper. Like that's fine if that's like your Twitter handle or something like that.
His burner
tarantula, account. The Durantula. Like no, like come on, that's dumb.
I know.
That's
terrible. A classic bad, maybe good one. Jason Williams, White Chocolate.
Yeah, that's good. I like that one.
So Larry Bird apparently is Larry Legend. Like when did
Larry Legend.
Was he being called that as he was playing?
I can't imagine he was. I don't remember hearing that. In the 80s and 90s, I watched a lot of NBA Inside stuff with Ahmad Rashad and Hannah Storm. And then I would get like NBA VHS tapes with Frank something and Marv Albert, where they would just show highlights. And I never heard them say Larry Legend. I think that was something that had to have been after the fact. Okay. I liked, if we're just going all-time NBA, I will always love David Robinson as the Admiral. That was wonderful. I liked Karl Malone as the mailman just because they had to explain why he was the mailman, which just made it so funny to me. Because I was like, why is he the mailman? Because he mails it in. What? Or no, because he delivers. Because he delivers.
He delivers the mail.
Because he delivers. It's like, makes it so much worse. Like, just, I don't know. Like, it's a good nickname, but oh God, like once you explain it to me, then it's like, I feel uncomfortable.
Yeah. I mean, you got Magic, Air Jordan, Dr. J. That's a great one. The Glove, Gary Payton. I think that's great.
That was good. Yep. I like to call him Double Cell Phone.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
Why is that?
Because when we were in Milwaukee and we went to a club, Gary Payton was on 2 cell phones at the same time. Which I don't even know how that works. Because he wasn't talking.
Was he like this? Like both?
He was like that. Yep. But he wasn't talking. He was just sitting in a loud club 10 feet from us. Just, it's like, I don't know what you're doing. And I don't like the fact that you came here in exchange for Ray Allen. That was terrible. He's done. He's dead to me.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, maybe we'll close it out with this one. Corey Maggette. Do you know Corey Maggette's nickname?
I don't.
Okay. It is bad porn. It describes. Okay. The nickname describes his playing style as having lots of penetration and scoring, but fans are left unsatisfied.
That is amazing. Holy crap.
So yeah, that was my favorite. That's number 1 on the list, I think.
That is the opposite of the Karl Malone nickname, where the nickname, you're kind of like, I don't really like it. But once you get the explanation, it's so much better. Whereas the Karl Malone, it's like, I like the nickname. Just don't tell me what it means. Oh, and then you tell me, and now I don't like it that much. Bad porn. I love it. That's fantastic.
Yes, I guess here's the last thing. My suggestion, if we had any suggestions for nicknames, Chris asked, let's give the people what they want.
Yes.
My suggestion is probably not a very good one, but I'm going to say, let's call Andre Jackson Jr. the Benefactor. I say this because, in my opinion, the team is always better with Ajax on the floor. He's always making them better. So he is the Benefactor.
I like that. That's pretty good. I'm on board.
It's a good word.
It is. Well, yeah, it's a great word. It's not one that is used all too often. So I feel like it's definitely available. Let's see, while we're here, if ChatGPT can provide 10 quick Andre Jackson Jr. Nicknames, just to play with that.
AI entering the podcast.
All right. I just said, let's see, ask for 5 options. Let's see what they say. 5 nicknames. AJJ. I don't like that.
That
the
is
Swiss Army
original.
knife. The Swiss Army knife, reflecting his versatility on the court.
Okay.
The Brew City Baller.
Fun.
High Flyer. And the Rookie Rocket.
Oh, he's always a rookie.
Yeah. No, I think ChatGPT cannot beat the Benefactor. I like it. ChatGPT says the Benefactor would work as a unique and meaningful nickname for Andre Jackson Jr. It suggests he brings value to the team by contributing selflessly, whether through defense, playmaking, or hustle plays. It's a standout name with a sense of purpose.
Ooh, okay.
Ooh, there we go.
ChatGPT's backing on that.
It is official. Andre Jackson Jr. will now be known as the Benefactor.
Okay. From now on this podcast, we will not say Ajax or Andre Jackson Jr.
Never again.
It will only be the Benefactor. You will just have to know what it is. Hopefully you hear this episode.
Yeah. And, next week we might have the Benefactor as a guest. So if he is here, then we can, ask him about it. We probably won't, but we might.
It's possible. Anything is possible.
Anything is possible.
Okay, we're getting a little loopy. Maybe it's too long. Let's end it. Get us more questions. That was a great question. Email us at doubledribblebucks@gmail.com. Follow us on Twitter at PodDDB. Subscribe and rate us on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Until then, go Bucks.